Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Scrollers podcast. Hope your day is going well. And I'm here today with my friend Twitless. You guys have seen him in previous exchanges. We've talked about C.S. Lewis's The Discarded Image. And before that, we read a novel by Charles Williams. Was that The Place of the Lion? It wasn't The Place of the Lion.
War in
it was
Heaven.
War in Heaven. War in Heaven. And today we're going to be talking about Dr. Faustus. We're going to be talking about the tradition of Faust from early Renaissance, from Marlowe, and then up into the Romantic German period, right? The Sturm und Drang of Goethe. And then we're going to be talking about implications for today, with particularly with re-enchantment movements. This being a cautionary tale, the story of Faust, we thought it would be particularly relevant. It's a conversation that both of us, we really don't have many people we could talk about this with, so we're excited to have this conversation together. How are you doing today, Twillis?
I'm stoked. Like I said, I need this conversation. It touches on literature and spirituality, and sometimes it's difficult to find a lot of crossover in this exact Venn diagram. So thank you very much for being willing to take some time and read some 16th century drama. Just a turn of the century there. One of the interesting things this play has, there's some drama about the dramatist, because this was written like right before Marlowe died under mysterious circumstances. And because he dies in like 1593, I think. And the play, depending on who's, I've seen some conversations. Some people say the play could have been performed in 1594, which would be after he died, and there's some debate. Maybe it was produced and right before he died, but so there's, I think, a little bit of conversation about where exactly it was performed, whether Marlowe actually saw it performed himself, and there's also some conversations about which version of the play is more accurate to Marlowe's vision, partially because he died. There's two versions of the play, an A version and a B version. And I think up until more recently, people thought that the shorter version was the more authoritative one, but I think there's also more conversation about with which one is actually more authentic or not. I read a blended version that kind of blends both the A and the B. The big difference is that the B version, which is attributed later, has a few more scenes attached to it, a few more bits of context. There is some like references to Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, essentially, and one of his knights, or one of his not knights, retinue, essentially, and one of the final scenes, I think, with an old man may have some expansion, but this play is very much a morality play, which is kind of a subsequent evolution, from my understanding, a subsequent evolution from the miracle play. So you have basically drama that was originally just dramatizations of Bible stories. And then from that, you get dramatizations of Bible concepts. So they get a little more abstract, they can get a little more creative, but they still have to have a very strong moral center to them. And so this one definitely fits more of the morality play. However, it does have some comic elements that don't really fit the morality play. There's some kind of goofy scenes with some side characters who just get into some antics, and that's another thing that I think some people look at and say, did Marlowe do that one? Or is that something that was added in later for by the people who put the play on to kind of just entertain the audience? So while Faust is selling his soul and getting dealing with those ramifications, and we're really supposed to take that very, very seriously, there's some people who just like borrow one of his spell books and go, ha, let's see what I can do. What mischief could I get into with this? So so it's an interesting play because just from that standpoint as well, the mixture of some of those elements. Sorry, that's a bit of just some background material to just, even when you talk about a play like this, it's just like, one of the things I think that's really interesting when you're diving into literature, and I know this happens with scriptural study as well, but it's the stakes are a little lower here, which is, you could read a different version, or hear a different version, or watch a different version than me, and we don't necessarily have to settle which version is the true version. Our spiritual lives are not at stake depending on which version of the text we settle on. So I know in biblical studies that can be a far more contentious debate.
Yeah. Yeah. My limited understanding is that the life of a text tends to expand. To your point, that may be the longer version, the B version. Maybe they figure the B version is the later version, just
So
just
that's
for no other reason than that it has more content to it, because
so that
that
was
typically is how things happen, right? You get
yeah.
accretions, you don't get subtractions.
So that was the logic. What the
Hmm.
I think it was the Rutledge version I read, though, said that the Rutledge version I read said that there is some debate as to whether or not that the smaller, shorter version was just a kind of um, almost like an adaptation. Hey, we're going to cut some stuff and make this more palatable. In that case, it would actually track that the shorter version would become after or something.
Yeah.
There's some different schools, competing schools of thought. Your logic makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense, and I think there's a lot of scholars who have reasoning, because especially when you look at the stuff that gets added, it's like, okay, this doesn't feel like Marlowe. So that logic does make some sense as well.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you painted a really interesting picture of from early medieval passion plays and nativity tableaus of putting on theatrical morality productions that like immanentize biblical stories for people, but clearly also meant to entertain. And there's some comedic elements that get embellished, is my understanding, with medieval Bible story plays. They might lean into the comedic, and they might add elements that are that are meant to attract the audience, but also keep the play memorable in a way. So there's a lot of they're going to be picking moments from stories that have a particular visual appeal, right? It's going to be exciting. You need to go see the stuff that's only typically in your mind. Now you get to see it on stage,
Hmm.
and, that's something that really stood out to me. That might have been the main thing I got from this. Is it felt like a culmination of uh, what a lot of play attendees have always wondered. Like, could I see? Is there, like, what would it be like if I could see Alexander the Great and his
Hmm.
lovers? If I could see Cleopatra, if I could see Helen of Troy, or if I could meet, like, it's just like, can I get this depicted in fiction, please? And can I get it all in one play? And is there some sort of uh, could you do that in a compelling way that's really emotionally and morally gripping, but also frankly titillating? Maybe, I don't know. Like, it almost starts to feel like the 16th century. We're already at this point where we're like, yes, we're telling a story that, I mean, legally, it has to tell a story that's within moral boundaries, but also we're going to push the envelope maybe a little bit. We're going to be heavy-handed about how you should not, like, the character who is manifesting this stuff is being transgressive on a cosmic level, like with his own soul. But we're also going to put on a darn good performance of it. We're going to show you stuff that you've only imagined. You know, we're gonna showcase it all, and it's going to be immensely entertaining, and it's going to be an appetite for the senses. It's
Hmm.
kind of. Do you think is that how it struck you as well, or how do you feel about that?
Well, when you were mentioning when you were mentioning that response, it reminded me of the fact that I believe this play um, calls for, in some of its, because you get the kind of, stage directions when you have them, like what people are supposed to be doing, but sometimes you get, kind of like what some of the ingredients are for the play. And I believe this comes from a preface to one of the editions that mentioned that one of the items that's required is kind of one of the mechanical things that you needed to build for this play was a dragon, because at a point in the play, Mephistopheles and Faust are flying on steeds to Rome, and essentially, and I've seen there was a BBC production where they basically built these kind of skeletal looking, kind of almost like necromantic dragons, and so I believe that that's. Yes, I think, yeah, exactly to your point, that this is a play that it is guided by its moral. In some ways, it can only really exist in its time period because of its moral framework. And in fact, one of the reasons why I think this play falls out of favor is because eventually, when the Puritans get power, it's like they're not tracking with this kind of fanciful stuff. But much more okay maybe with the miracle play kind of a thing. But even then, it's just, read your Bible and a primer, and that's pretty much all you need. Just read your Bible is kind of the literature. But here, where you build a dragon, build a necromantic, a dragon that a sorcerer and his devil, a servant devil, will ride to Rome, and make that part of a moral project. A intensely moral project, one that is so strong that modern audiences may, in fact, I don't think it's on the nose too much, but some audiences probably track it that way.
Yeah, I got the impression that they were able to go, that Marlowe was able to go as far as he did with his Feast of the Senses, because and he could justify that because he was demonstrating that that the goodness of God in the blood of Christ, no less, was even that much more of a feast of the senses. And your own salvation, like if you could only see the angels that are pleading on behalf of your soul, that you would realize that as incredible, as kaleidoscopic of an array of the stuff that's being displayed to you, in terms of temptations and the personification of the vices, this pageantry of decay and corruption. If only you could see beyond that horizon to the goodness that is more powerful still, like that you wouldn't even be tempted by what Faust was tempted by, is kind of the impression I get, which is an interesting tension, and it kind of balances the play, because if it was, modern audiences would, I don't know, modern writers might, or production people might actually not balance that so well, and they would see it as heavy-handed in terms of the morality play side, and not understand that that's actually being balanced in a way by the sensuality of the temptations, if that makes sense. Like he can go in both extremes at once, and the morality wins out by a nose hair in a way, in terms of like, what am I even doing here? Why am I watching this play? I feel like the morality, the moral lesson is meant to win out, but he can push it that far because he's also pushed you in terms of what the temptations are displayed as, is basically what I'm trying to say, which is incredible. I mean, what a it's like what a roller coaster to put an audience through.
It definitely gives him
pretty intense.
I would almost say it's almost required. It's almost like permission.
Yeah.
In order for me to have permission to show this much hellishness,
Yep.
I'm gonna have to have a message that has enough equal weight behind it that justifies what we're doing.
Yeah.
But
I have to tempt you almost as an audience member to say, wow, it'd be really cool to be Dr. Faustus. I gotta admit, like, not gonna lie, because you're showing me everything he gets, and I'm not just being. It's not just being alluded to off stage. This isn't just a Greek drama. Like it's on full display.
Yep.
And because I can tempt you, I can also let you know, like, even that temptation isn't worth it. Yeah, to your point,
And
which is incredible.
I think the ending scene is the one that really hits that home.
Yeah.
The final scene is kind of legendary. We'll get to that. I don't want to get spoil it too early. But that ending, holy cow!
Yeah.
So for our audience who maybe not as familiar, or maybe need a little bit of maybe more of a primer on what Faust is, or Faustian, and it's a byword, but I think it bears to talk a little bit about kind of like what it is, and what we have in this play loosely before we dive into maybe some specifics. Do you mind?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it comes from what's fascinating is, like all good myths, I think there's some truth in it. Faust was a real guy. He was we don't know a lot about him, but he was a German kind of a palm reader, fortune teller, scholar, scam artist. Kind of all potentially all those things. Part of the problem, from what I can tell, from what I can read, is that some of the stuff that was written about him was written by someone who didn't like him very much. So we kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. It was a rival who was writing about him. How reliable are some of these stories? But eventually,
was he contemporaries with Marlowe, or does he predate?
No, this predates. This
No.
So the Faust legend's more medieval, and we're going into kind of the Renaissance. So that's something that's mentioned that I think both Goethe and Marlowe don't necessarily care as much to keep everything like historically accurate. And so if something comes across, if terminology is being used that's anachronistic, like Goethe sure as hell does not care. The level that he does not care about accuracy is kind of funny. But Faust is meant to be much more medieval. I thought was interesting is that his name, I think it was a nom de plume, because in Italian it translates to fortunate, and in German it translates to fist. And so there was this kind of
Oh wow.
there's even something behind the name that's very clever. And so he's Fortunate Fist, which is a cool kung fu superhero name, if I ever heard one. But so this legend eventually just kind of emerges, and I think there's some maybe linkages to some other, like I don't know if there's a linkage to like the wandering Jew archetype or something, but eventually you get this thing that emerges of he sold his soul to the devil, and then that trickles down into a chapbook. I believe a German chapbook that just kind of the history of Dr. Faustus, and then Marlowe, I believe, reads that, and I believe the chapbook or the translation of the chapbook comes somewhere. It might have been in 1592. So again, it's like almost right before this play is written, and then right before Marlowe dies. So Goethe obviously is channeling that much later. That's kind of the basic history of some of that. But the general gist of it is you have a German scholar, and this goes for both Goethe's version and for Marlowe's version. You have a German scholar who basically gets tired. The degree of whether he gets tired, we can talk about, but he gets tired of his current study. And then he basically settles on necromancy, to summon spirits. And from there, he conjures up Mephistopheles. Mephisto to some, Mephistopheles, one of literature's most famous devils. And then strikes a deal of some kind, in exchange for power or knowledge or something. Marlowe's play takes this in plays it very, very straight. He is given a 24 years to have power and dominion, essentially, for whatever he wants. And after those 24 years are up, he's signed a contract in his blood. And then Mephistopheles and Lucifer will be able to claim his soul for all eternity. So the play follows this, what happens in the ensuing adventures slash misadventures. For Marlowe's Faust, it takes a very different direction than Goethe's, is what I'll say.
So that's the origin. Some might have heard of the Faustian bargain,
Yep.
that term that you mentioned at the start. So that Faustian bargain is you get ultimate goodies on the temporal plane in exchange for your soul, in exchange for giving up the eternal reward, and damning yourself for whether it's carnal pleasures or ultimate power, I guess, in this life.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Most people would say that that's he sold himself cheap. But the thing is that Faust doesn't see it that way in the play. There's a bit of a paradox here, and this is where I think it's really interesting to start talking about this play in a more metaphorical or allegorical sense, because Faust says that he's so eager to get the power that he says, nah, I don't really believe in the eternity of the soul anyway. There's nothing after this life. That's all just a bunch of hooey. And he's taking... That's one thing that occurred to me as we were just talking, is that this play is it's taking an anti-Age of Reason stance. The scholars are not portrayed in a positive light here, and their pursuit of knowledge is portrayed as one of the things that leads them ill. And so Faust is taking this sort of skeptic's viewpoint, and he's saying, hey, I don't really believe in the soul here. He's choosing to not believe in the eternity of the soul so he can get the power. So he does not think that he's selling himself cheap, because he actually doesn't think, hey, when I die, I'll just be dead. There'll be nothing in the afterlife to torment me. I'm fine. So this 24 years of power is totally going to be worth it. Meanwhile, Mephistopheles is literally saying to him, I'm visual empirical proof that hell is real. And he even says this,
like, I'm in hell right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's real. Yeah.
And Faust's like, nah. Faust is
like, just to underscore, you made a really important point. Dr. Faust makes the decision because he wants power. He decides to be agnostic about the afterlife, right? Like, it's almost like he reasons himself into saying, what would be, by any other measurement, by the standards of the time, would be a cheap exchange. I'm going to reason myself out of thinking that it's cheap, and I'm going to reason myself into thinking that I'm giving away, that this is a fair exchange, that it's something that where I'm actually going to benefit the most from this exchange. Like, this is in my favor by getting 24 years of anything I could ever want, anything my senses would desire, and giving up eternity.
He also rationalizes it a bit, because he's like, because Mephistopheles, as you just said, says, well, I'm in hell right now. So there's a little bit of conversation about what hell is, and Faustus says, well, if you're in hell right now and you're talking to me on Earth, that version of hell I'm fine with. So even if, like, so he's also kind of, he has a rationalization that tracks for that. And Mephistopheles ends up saying that, like, when Judgment Day comes, is a wonderful quote. He says, everything that isn't heaven will be hell. And so that's kind of his perspective on it, is that, like, I've been cast out of heaven, and so everything that is being separated from God and God's, throne is hell.
Especially when everything becomes glorified, that is going to be in heaven, when everything has been cleansed and perfected, right? Like, by that contrast, everything that is not taken up into paradise is going to be much more transparently hell as a result. Yeah, like that gap is going to widen. Eschatologically.
One thing I want to point out here is that even though this play has the demoniacal, it's got the demonology aspects to it. It's got these very colorful portrayals of demons and hell and the rest of that, the things that people in today's day and age really like to be skeptical towards. One thing I want to point out that makes this play really good is the fact that line that Mephistopheles says, which is the fact that hell isn't just this medieval looking Mordor landscape with lava. It is being separated from God, and everything that is separated from God will be hell because God's not there. And that is a very forward thinking kind of way of thinking about that spiritual dynamic. One of the things I really was looking forward to talking to you and already enjoying is the fact that this play, as old as it is, has some evergreen spiritual perspectives that are worthy to talk about today. And that's one of them, which is the fact that as much as a feast for the eyes this is, and as much of there's demonic spectacle going on in this play, there's also just some banger quotes that just nail some spiritual truths right on the head, which is, everywhere that God isn't, that's going to be hell. However you slice that. Yeah. And that's a very, I think, transcendent kind of an idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something else, because I don't know if Goethe engages with this, but something else that I noticed that was pretty readily apparent with Marlowe is the Dr. Faust isn't just interested. He's much more interested in indulgence of the senses than I anticipated. But because I don't know what about the Faustian bargain that I expected but I did expect it to be like the acquisition of knowledge, including maybe forbidden knowledge, angelic knowledge, like knowledge that's too big for men to possess. I did expect that, and you also get that in this play, which is interesting.
Yeah, how did you like when he basically just sits him down? It's Mephistopheles, tell me about the spheres. And we just read the discarded image, which Lewis just walks us through the spheres. And so did you prefer Lewis's walking through the spheres or Mephistopheles? Trick question.
Well, boy, what a complex. There's a scholar. He's a Catholic scholar named Andrei Orlov, who writes about. He does a lot of work on the Book of Enoch and how it engages with contemporary literature from the ancient Near East, going right up into. He's got. I think his heritage is he comes from Ukraine, so it goes right up into like medieval Jewish literature from that kind of Slavic region, which was very interested in this topic of, is it, to what point does knowledge become forbidden? If that, just to keep it simple. And his view is that the book of Job may very well be an answer to the book of Enoch. It might have been written after the book of Enoch, whereas you've got Enoch is very much a Faustian type character in some ways, except he asks to get all the knowledge, and he asks it from the angels, from the good guys, and he gets it all. He actually gets all that knowledge. He doesn't do the sensual pleasure route, but he gets to understand the knowledge of the heavenly spheres, and he gets to see things from an angelic perspective. He gets divinized in a way, and can see, and then has the capacity to then understand the way things are seen from God's perspective. Whereas Job, and it's interesting, and it's worth noting that Job is in it's in most people's Bibles. I mean, it's in everyone's Bibles. Enoch is only in some, and that has to do with the tradition of, like, how Jews by the Second Temple period came down on this, is whether or not you're supposed to take the Enochian, low-key, possibly Faustian approach of understanding these things, or should you say, should you cover your mouth and put your head in the dust when God shows up and asks you, how do the heavens work?
Yeah.
How do the spheres? Tell me about Leviathan. Tell me about tell me about my storehouses of snow, or how the plants grow, and those sort of things, implying that this is not knowledge for you, and you do not have the capacity to understand these things. Which, and I felt that tension in Marlowe's Faust, but in a way, and it's fascinating with that early, you know, that proto scientific, super, like, the precursors to the modern era, which Goethe is going to play with too, is my understanding. Is Marlowe's already identifying, we're about to enter on a project culturally where we're going to start like, I mean, America is already mentioned. This is already a post New World kind of thing. So we already have a whole corner of the planet now that's expanded people's horizons. We're about to enter into a project, us being, late, 16th century England, that where we might acquire more knowledge than we have morally, the moral capacity to manage or acquire. And it might look, it might look, it might look innocent or morally neutral, because knowledge just seems neutral. But let's inquire. Let's investigate that, because we might be finding ourselves in a Jobian situation, or we might think that we're Enoch, and really we're this character Faust. So all that is to say, just the acquiring of knowledge. We've learned, we come from a culture today where we've learned that is, it's by definition, it's treated as morally, I'd say morally positive. At worst, morally neutral.
Absolutely.
But this is a story where it's saying, and if you, I don't know, if you have a Bible in your house, you come from a culture that has questioned that, and it has said, just be hesitant, like, watch out. Some knowledge is for you, and some knowledge is for, realms that you do not have the capacity to engage with.
That's
So it's a cautionary tale on that level.
No, I think it's really interesting because the play, while being, of that time where we're turning away, we're growing or drifting away from, or leaving, we'll say leaving. I'm trying to find a term that's more neutral, that doesn't just put the Middle Ages as, they're bad. But leaving the Middle Ages behind, embracing the Age of Reason, but this play is cautionary on that point. And it even, like, multiple times they're talking about, like, one of the last lines of the play, potentially the last line of the play, depending on which version you're seeing. Mephistopheles, I'll burn my books. It was specifically, even the term multiple times it gets brought up. I don't the nature of the book itself is brought as suspect, because Lucifer hands Faust books. Read this one. It's got some forbidden knowledge in it. This one has, because Faust says, give me a book that has all the knowledge on all the trees. Here you go. Read this one. Here's the knowledge on all the spheres. It just hands him book after book after book. And at the end, he's like, I'll burn the books. So even the idea of knowledge being in book form, this is something that is heretical by a more Age of Reason standpoint, that you would burn knowledge. But this one is much more skeptical of that idea. What I think is interesting is that, and this might make Faust, the return of Faust, very important, is that the idea of forbidden knowledge is something that I think becomes far more relevant in a modernist, postmodern context, and in a contemporary context, because modernism says knowledge gave us mustard gas and tanks, and then thereafter the nuclear bomb. We definitely didn't need that. That one could have stayed hidden. We can annihilate the world. And then today we're talking about whether or not the knowledge of AI is worth it. Wow. Did we in fact cross a line, and should that one have stayed buried? Because people will bemoan it. People will say, oh yeah, I use my cell phone all the time. I wish I did. I wish this. It's so weird how people pull out their cell phones, doom scroll on it, refuse to put it down, and say, I wish this thing didn't exist.
Yeah. Do I have the capacity in a very Faustian way? Do I even possess the ability anymore to deny this? Can I repent of this? It seems that I cannot.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
That occurs more than once in this play.
Yep. So that's fascinating. That
That's
alone is
brutal.
fascinating.
That's very brutal.
So this play is so relevant. The second thing I wanted to mention, when you brought up Job, when we have a moment to talk about Goethe's version starts off with a Job opening, like straight ripped off the pages, almost plagiarism.
Wow. There you go.
It's consider my servant Faust is actually what the Lord basically says to Mephistopheles.
Wow.
So the Job thing is totally relevant as well. But I love this idea that you just brought up about the knowledge aspect, because like that's very relevant. And the now that you've talked about the repentance angle, I want to dive into a couple of the spiritual aspects here. Let's talk about one of my favorite scenes, if you don't mind, the opening conjuration. Another thing that I think is so relevant and evergreen here is Faust conjures Mephistopheles, makes him dress up like a monk, which is a dig, I think, at the papists. There's some anti-Catholic sentiment going on here. But then he says Faust is really just crowing over his own skill, and he says, I summoned thee, right? And Mephistopheles says, actually, he fact checks Faust, and he basically says, actually, if you give me a second, I might try and pull it, because just some of the wording here I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
So give me a second to pull this up, because I think the wording is worth it.
Yeah, he is. Faust essentially assumes the same thing. Most people popularly assume about demons is that you can perform a magical ritual and then they are kind of like a genie that shows up as your servant to obey your command. Your wish is my command, and that gets checked right at the start here, which is interesting.
Let's see here if I can find it. Where's the one moment I want to find it? I'm not going to find
I remember it was something like you performing this unholy ritual exposes your soft underbelly in a way. Like it's a signal of that there is prey afoot, and I, being a predator, have come on Satan's command to sniff you out.
Yeah,
that's my memory of it. But
I got it. Okay, so so Faust says, "Did not my conjuring speeches raise thee speak? That was the cause, but yet per accidents. For when we hear one rack the name of God, abjure the scriptures and his Savior Christ, we fly and hope to get his glorious soul. Nor will we come unless he use such means whereby he is in danger to be damned. Therefore, the shortest cut for conjuring is stoutly to abjure the Trinity and pray devoutly to the Prince of Hell." But so it's very specifically exactly what you say, which is the fact that you do not have the power here. Okay, which is another thing that's really important to this time period and to, I think, the spiritual truth that is evergreen. Okay, you do not have power over the spirits. Whatever power you get over this world, whatever dominion you have, is granted. Okay, and in this case, it is like I said, it's a signal for a spiritual predator. The portrayal of the demon of the evil ones as spiritual predators is a concept I really think is something I would really like to highlight, because again, the idea that demons are walking around with pitchforks and they look a particular way, a lot of this comes from myth. As you know exactly which satyr and which Greco-Roman tradition that literally comes from, but or even into antiquity, right? I know you're really in tune with where Baal comes from, the cow, the cattle, the geographic, like where all that comes from. Here, the idea that if the spiritual ecosystem exists, the fact that there would be spiritual predation is not something that I think is very far-fetched. I think that's something that a lot of people can accept. Even if you don't accept the exact form of it has to be with horns and a pitchfork, the idea that if there are souls, if the souls can exist in a sort of ecosystem, we call that heaven or whatever hell, whatever you want to describe that as, that there would be spiritual either allies or, like I said, predators out there to get you. And I think this even tracks with scripture when in one of Paul's letters where he describes, I think it's Paul, with the was it Peter, the adversary prowls about like a lion, seeking to devour.
Hmm.
But it's one of the epistles. And so the idea, literally, that's portraying, a spiritual adversary as a predator, out to try and devour what it can. And so that idea, and especially in today's epoch, there's so much conversation about Epstein files, for example, the predators who are out to devour the innocent, and Marlowe understands this. To what extent he believes it himself, that's another series of debates. His own spiritual leanings. I'm focusing specifically on the text and what Marlowe was allowed to put on stage at this time, and he
Yeah.
portrays a really incisive depiction and understanding of this. It's not just a guy with a pitchfork. You've sent out a signal. I'm a shark. I've detected blood in the water.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's a haunting idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's haunting. And I love that you brought up AI because that's been a renewed conversational touch point is whether or not whether or not there are intelligences that are non-corporeal that can be summoned, or are they more interested in maybe embodying themselves in opportunities like these, like the sort of ones that Faust tragically, woefully sets up and exposes himself to. So yeah, so Mephistopheles can kind of descend and embody himself within the story because of the opportunities that are afforded to him by Faust, which is and this I didn't do a good job of tying that into AI, but that's frequently that it seems to be a conversation that people are having is like when we think about possession, like spiritual possession, because in a way Faust is possessed. Well, I don't know. It's not conventional possession the way we think of it, but his trajectory is it's irreversibly. Well, if at first it's reversibly, but then it becomes irreversibly set on a new course where you like the character and the quality, the substance of his spirit is changed because of these actions and because of his proximity to these devils. That feels adjacent to possession, and it does make me.
It touches on a very common conversation that's in this play. I don't know how far I want to go into this one, but I feel like we should at least mention it because I feel like chat will definitely be on top of it, which is the Calvinist debate. And the question is Faust predestined to be damned, or does he actually have some free will here? Does he have a chance? It's interesting from a literary perspective, like that's actually a really interesting question, because in order for the play to happen, he has to be damned. So he is predestined. So the Calvinist part totally tracks. But the free will also tracks as well, in the sense that he is given, up until right before the demons drag him to hell, he's given, there's a good angel and a bad angel who are separate characters. And they're either meant to be angels or they're meant to be kind of representative of some of those things that we read about in the discarded image, the sort of like, I don't know, metaphorical representations of your conscience, or, some extension of your own soul or whatever. So he's got a good angel. He literally has the good angel, bad angel on his shoulder. And the good angel, like I said, up until, like I said, pretty much the last minute is urging him to repent. And so even after he signs the contract, and he signs the contract in his own blood, which is also a wonderful moment in the Wishbone interpretation of Faust, which is where I was, I think, first introduced to this whole thing. There is a Wishbone did Faust. It shocked me, terrified me as a kid, by the way. But so he signs a contract in blood, and there's a wonderful moment because he's like, nature is rebelling. Like he's like, my blood congeals. Like it's like nature is fighting my ability to do this. And Mephistopheles says, "I'll get some fire. We'll make sure the blood can flow." But even after that contract is signed, sealed, and delivered, because of how this play functions in a spiritual understanding of the time, God must be portrayed as superior to Satan.
Yeah.
So the way I track this play is the fact that there is nothing that Satan can sign that God cannot unsign. And so my interpretation of this play is that it is Faust who continue, and I think this is borne out in the textual evidence. Faust continues to, he gets scared. Lucifer and the demons show up and keep trying to scare him and tempt him into staying in the bargain. But if it was all a foregone conclusion, why would they need to do that? Because God is stronger. And so this play, because, and this is another thing about this play is our play as evangelicals and as just Bible believing Christians. This is our play. This is not the secular world's play. They cannot master it like we can. And so because those who are believers understand that God is superior to Satan, it is Faust's fault that he is damned. He does not get an easy, oh, I'm doomed. No, you don't get an easy way out here, out of your spiritual responsibility. It is your choice all the way down. It's your responsibility. You're culpable all the way down here.
Yeah, just to reinforce that, those are great points. Like, we should take the angel's words for it before we take Faust's own words.
Yeah.
He is more fatalistic about his own disposition, but he's also the fallen, tragic character who doesn't understand the consequences of his actions. And and there are intelligences above him still pleading on his behalf right up until the end, which is the play telling us that he has more agency than he's giving himself credit for. That's a great point.
Which also gives so much more nuance to to what's going on here. Which again, this is 1592, 1593, right before the turn of the century here. And like I said, this play I feel like in some ways could be written today. So I really, like I said, this is an excellent play, and in its portrayal of spiritual ideas, and in some cases I think of spiritual truths, like I said, are just as relevant now. In some cases, potentially even more relevant as we face some of the new forbidden knowledges. So I love this. And in addition, though, I have to mention that, the play also has a little bit of something for everyone. So it's got some demonic spectacle, it's got some spiritual truth, and if you just need to laugh a little bit, there are just some little interludes where they're basically a parody of what the bargain that Faust is making. So like Faust has a protege called Wagner, and Wagner basically makes his own bargain with some clown, and it's clearly meant to mimic. It's clearly meant to be just a sort of like a minuscule of what's actually happening, but because it's just some guy who he's half arsing it, so he doesn't really understand what he's doing with any of the stuff. It just ends up with comedic results. And so his attempt to conjures Mephistopheles, actually, at some point. And Mephistopheles gets, like, called away, which kind of contradicts the earlier thing that you're just sending up signals. Some people have interpreted that as that was not Marlowe's edition, because it kind of contradicts that earlier serious moment. Whether or not that's the case, it's very clearly meant to be, this scene's comedic. So it's not actually meant to operate on the same level, diegetically speaking, but comedically, the demon gets summoned by a bunch of half-wits, and he basically just transforms them into animals. You're a monkey, you're a dog, go and make a mess of things. And then I believe they get retransformed back at the end. I don't even think it's permanent. So it's just, it's just moments of levity, which I also think make this play not quite as heavy as it would be. So just structurally speaking, I think it's nice to point out that the play is not just about Faust damning himself by degrees. Even when he's got his power, he goes and plays a bunch of pranks on the Pope. It's very clearly meant to be a comedic scene. He makes himself invisible, and he just starts slapping cardinals and then stealing the Pope's wine, and it just having a laugh at the Pope's expense. So some of these usages of power are they're less in line with the spiritual message and just meant to entertain.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Like within the play is its own satire, side story, which is hilarious. Yeah, and even with the main storyline, it almost reminds me of like folks will talk about video game design, and sometimes you could have an intense moral through line, but does anyone remember the main storyline of Grand Theft Auto, or do we just remember the that you can rob so many banks that eventually the cops send a helicopter and you can blow it up with a bazooka? It's there are points where the play kind of feels like that, which is it's a perilous thing. I mean, we talked about at the beginning, but to give you that much sensory indulgence and fun, just like what if scenarios, like the most extreme what if scenarios, scene after scene, just like playing GTA.
Yeah.
And yet, can you still land the plane with the moral through line, which it does. GTA not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to, is it the ludonarrative dissonance, where there's a disconnect between like what the through line for the story is and your ability to, you can kill 100 people and then Lara Croft says, I killed a person. And it's like, yeah, the whole game is you killing.
Right? I forgot that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to talk a little Goethe, or do you want to land the plane on Marlowe's like damnation scene? Because we got to talk about the final damnation scene at least a little bit, because that thing is just intense.
Let's talk about final damnation. Yeah.
What did you what I want to hear, like, what you thought of that, because like this is my second time reading this, but like as someone hearing or experiencing that for the first time, how did that track?
That was the part that I had the most challenge with tracking and visualizing as an audio drama, which is that's not to my credit. I probably should watched a play version of this so I could have caught the visual. So I didn't understand what was going on at the end, other than the evil angel and the good angel.
Well, what about just to me, the more important part, apart from the setting all the visual side, just Faust's like final soliloquy, because the setup is the clock is ticking. He's got 1 hour left. Midnight, it's over. And so he just starts making these intense, I don't think you get a more intense plea in all of literature. A man who knows he's damned to die and damned to eternal damnation, and he is going through he is grieving on a cosmological level. And so he is saying, what he ends up saying things like, a drop of Christ's blood would save me, a half a drop. He's like, delay this. He's like, make this hour stretch out into a year, a month, a week, 2 hours, anything. He's just pleading for any inch he can get. And then, like, it's coming. The inexorable passage of time is coming, and he can do nothing to stop it. And then he's trying to bargain with no one in particular even. And it's sheer desperation. And again, like I said, I don't think I've ever seen anything that better accounts for this type of desperation in literature, just because of what he knows. Um, there's not the ambiguity. He's not going into the unknown. It's known to him, and he's been shown it. Lucifer in fact says, "I'm going to take you to hell. I'm going to show it. I'm going to show you around." So that even I think happens at some point. I think it might happen off screen, but and then he's just like, "Mountains swallow me. May the air take me. Just anything but just what I have, what my own, anything but the consequences of my own actions, please." And he just can't get out of it, even though there is in fact a path that he could have taken, which was just repentance. It was the one he refuses. The one he says,
Wow.
my mouth is closed. My hands are pinned down by the devils.
Yeah.
But yeah, now body, turn to air, or Lucifer will bear thee quick to hell. And then they show up and drag him down. So it's that. I guess what I'm saying is, what did you make of that ending speech of his?
Yeah, it was really powerful. I'm recalling there was a line where he says, "Let Faustus live in hell 1,000 years, 100,000, and at last be saved."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Apparently, this is a term. Uh, there's a term called enjambment, which
Yep.
is just run-on lines,
Yep. Yep.
meant to underscore that idea of his desperation, where you just get phrase after phrase where he's just appealing to anything. He's just grasping frantically in speech at anything that will anything except for repentance, like you said. It yet in another line that struck me, like eventually Faust still understands, like, this isn't working. The stars move still, time runs, the clock will strike, the devil will come, and Faustus must be damned. He says this of himself, you know. Yeah,
He also goes through. So he also mentions, because he mentions Pythagoras, is he's like, oh, if only he basically brings up reincarnation. If only reincarnation were true. He goes through
yeah,
like several. He speed runs several other belief systems. Like, I love the one which is basically almost a purgatory. Let purgatory be the thing. I can be
yeah,
damned for 1,000,000 years as long as there's a hope at the end, as long as it's not eternity. Gee, I wish that reincarnation were real, because at least the animals live happy and then just die and don't know it. But I know what's coming, and it's going to be eternal separation from God everywhere where God isn't. And so it's, yeah, like I said, this is a very, I agree, very powerful ending. It's one of the reasons why I prefer, I think, Marlowe's version over Goethe's envisioning of this. But the
yeah.
pleading is just, and there's apparently a film version with Elizabeth Taylor actually plays the specter of Helen that gets summoned. And I just watched just some clips of that final scene, and it was moving. Like, it's films from with the 70s or something, and I was
Hmm.
like, I was feeling it. It was it's seeing that scene performed is very moving if you have any sense of spiritual matters whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating that Marlowe has such an intense. Uh, he says he has such vivid creativity on full display in the story, and yet I appreciate the fact that he's also a creature of his time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also appreciating maybe from I don't I appreciate Goethe as a poet. I appreciate him as a romantic. I appreciate him less when it comes to re-envisioning morality plays, because he's a creature of his time too.
Yeah.
And and I wonder about Goethe being like a signal point of that shift towards where we were 200 years later, a little bit more than that, culturally in Western Europe, where we were starting to say maybe with like the recasting of Milton in Paradise Lost, which is another. I mean, that's another story we could talk about. An intense morality play, but where you start to see these tragic figures as actually being where the stories start to be less critical of the tragic character's actions. It really you're meant to understand these characters as actually embodying noble principles that they're following out, that they're seeing through in their life, and
Yep.
it's actually their scenario, their arena. It's actually the way reality is structured that's falling short of these characters' principles in a way.
You're describing Goethe's, I think, situation much
Yeah,
much more closely. Yeah. Do you
yeah.
we could talk a little more about Goethe's, or we could just like save that and just do a follow up and just because like
Okay.
I think we could compare and contrast them. That would be fantastic.
Hmm.
But it's totally up to you. I have a few words I can say on it, but it would be totally awesome to do a follow up on this, depending on what you're.
Maybe we do that because then it'll give me a chance to actually read his version in detail rather
Yeah.
than just me shooting from the hip as I've been doing. Because again, like I like, he's another creature of his time, as are we all. He's in, Goethe's good at what he's advancing in some respects. I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's particularly interesting when a later author revisits a meme or a trope or an
Yeah.
archetype from a previous period, a period that from the author's own vantage point needs to be critically revised or looked at from a new angle, maybe from a superior angle, and you get like a subversive sort of twist where you say, maybe we're going to look back on this, and we're not going to look at it just to refresh it. We're going to look back at it to maybe to tell a different story that that our forebears might not like.
That is absolutely. It's so funny. Even with you shooting from the hip, that's exactly what Goethe ends up doing. And that's
Yeah.
also why I personally think that. I mean, for as good as that ends up being, it's not this.
Yeah.
And it can't reach what's this does. So we should definitely do a follow up on that. And there's some good film versions I think that do that are for both versions.
Mm.
Well, if we're thinking of wrapping up here, I would love to end this conversation on a question, which is why is Faust unclaimed dramaturgical territory for contemporary Christians? Why is it that the only people who really seem to be claiming Faust are secular people who don't believe it and mostly point at it to say, this is what these people believed back in the day. Whereas we should be the ones putting on film versions of Faust today as spiritual warnings to our world. So why is it? And I kind of know some of the reasons why, but I wanted to kind of just like put that question out there for our audience and to you. What do you make of that? Why is Faust unclaimed territory? As relevant as it is. I think even as a piece of witnessing, like this is a witnessing tool. Put this on TV. Not only is it functions as horror at seeing like what spiritual like predation looks like in hell, but it's also showing like how to escape damnation, which is, I think, at least that's supposed to be kind of what the Christian message is. So why is it that when Christians make television programs, we get Hallmark Channel every bloody time, but no one will say, I'm making Faust? We have a architectural template that to show a spiritual horror story that actually has a very strong, I think, salvation message within it, which is, just repent. Just repent and you will escape damnation, which is I think part of one of the the crux of what the salvation message is.
That's really powerful. Yeah, like I've never heard of as many people our age and younger talking about the lives of the saints as I have in the last few years. And Faust is obviously like by Marlowe's description, he's not a saint, of course, but but it's like just taking that principle of like let's let's follow through a course of understanding, like let's follow through a narrative through line that explains the kind of like has previously been described with sci-fi, like let's take a piece of technology and follow it through to its logical conclusion. Let's take a piece of moral technology, maybe, or a moral principle or an immoral principle, and follow it through to its logical conclusion. What does this do to a man, or what does this do to a person? How does this transform or change them? How does this disfigure their spiritual image? Would follow through to its extreme conclusion. Let's walk it out. That should be that has a lot of potency. Has a lot of potency, and I have no idea why people aren't claiming Faust. Maybe he's too Western. Maybe he's too English. There isn't enough. Uh, there isn't enough to romance about. Maybe he doesn't seem exotic enough. But to your point, I mean, from the English tradition, there is an intense, like if you want something that is going to speak to every one of your senses, Marlowe's of that gospel message, but from an I don't want to say entertaining, but an immense, like an extremely satisfying what am I trying to say here?
Aesthetic, maybe?
Yeah, a phantasmagorically aesthetic experience. It's going to be you can't do better than Marlowe, is my understanding. I struggle to think of where else you'd go. Maybe he's just, and it could just be, and we'll explore this in part 2. It could just be that Goethe did such a successful job of recasting, like, and claiming it, colonizing this story, that nobody knows of it beyond that recasting. They only know the revised edition that a 19th century German romantic came up with. It could just be that, and that's something we'll probably have to explore between then
No,
and now.
you got a point. The other thing I was trying to highlight, there's two things, which is the fact that there's in America we have a lineage of Puritanism, and like I said, this play I think fell out of favor when the Puritans came in, and that lineage informs even to this day aspects of our media, which is one of the reasons why we don't use as many just even how the evolution of the picture book, just how certain media evolved in America, just tracked a Puritan New England way of thinking. So that's part of it. The other part of it that I think for contemporary audiences, and this is the one that I think is unfortunate, which is there is such a rejection of the lasciviousness of Hollywood's hellmouth, as it were, that there is a perception that in order to be pure and to be Christian, you have to be sanitized. So a lot of Christian media ends up being very sanitized. And when you sanitize Christian media, you also end up with something that is just very Hallmark. It's just what gets produced. And it's just unfortunate because in this, we lost the ability to do something like Faust. I know that there are some Christian authors who flirt with horror, or as Fly Fox Pro said, spiritual fantasy, I think is what he said. So like Charles Williams, so you have some trailblazers, you have some transgressors who clearly don't fit in the typical mold. But just the way that, and this is I think something that some of the Orthodox turn people will definitely have something to chew on in comments. But just some of how evangelical Christianity has been for the past however many decades in America, that has led to a very sanitized Easter Bunny kind of media production.
Great
And
points.
I just want to point out that if one of my takeaways here is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel entirely. There is literally just, we have a template. Marlowe wrote this play. All we have to do is just take it out and perform it. So obviously, we should continue to make our own stuff, but we can claim some culture, and that's something that I definitely want to do. I want to claim Faust. This is our play, and we can master it in a way that no one else can. We understand it better than anyone who is outside of the Christian tradition does. Faust is ours. I'm claiming it today. Faustus. Sorry, I have to put the right ending. Dr. Faustus is ours.
He does have a doctorate, and he is conversant. He's well conversant in Latin, right? So I think he even refers to himself as Faustus, right? He Latinizes his own name. It's just funny. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Twitless, for this conversation. This has been great. It was great to review the audio drama. I need to go and actually read it now, and I look forward to chatting about Goethe as well.
Absolutely.
So thanks again for everybody listening, and we'll see you again on the next Scrollers Podcast episode.